Hey everybody, and welcome back to my channel. Thanks for joining me. We're going to be talking about context engineering in this video. What is context engineering and why should you care? It may be something that's going to bring back discipline in the age of vibe coding. To all the software engineers and developers that are watching my channel on a regular basis, do you guys remember like we used to code and have things like requirements and test cases, and we used to build in kind of guardrails about how we do a software development, and then all of a sudden vibe code just kind of takes over? Well, it seems like maybe discipline might be coming back, and that is in the form of context engineering, the next step after vibe coding. Who am I? I'm Scott Moore. I've been in software for over 30 years, and I've been a performance engineer a majority of that time, but I've been in every aspect of the software development lifecycle. So I've seen a lot and done a lot. And I've been hearing about this new thing on all the other social media channels about context engineering. So I decided to do some research about it. And I've done a little bit of vibe coding myself, and I kind of understand what they're talking about here, but maybe you haven't heard of it. So what is context engineering? According to the powers that be and the people who named this, it is the intentional design, assembly, and delivery of all the information, rules, tools, and resources that an AI system needs to accomplish a task with high quality. That was part of an X post by Shopify's CEO Toby Lütke, and there was some conversations with some of the leaders of this whole like vibe coding AI powered software movement, and he mentioned that it is the art of providing all the context for the task to be plausibly solvable by the LLM. So we've heard a lot about prompt engineering in the last year or two, and we've been telling, especially like quality engineering people, you need to learn how to be the best prompt engineer that you can. And now we're realizing that maybe it's context engineering that we should be teaching, because prompt engineering is really trying to get the perfect question asked for a single interaction, whereas context engineering is trying to get the system to behave intelligently for the whole environment, the whole architecture. So there's a big difference. And I think that's kind of what's happening now, is that people have gotten that initial rush of, I've developed this thing and got instant gratification because this thing spits out some code or a nice graph or a nice landing page for me. And it did really well on that. And I got that satisfaction of it. But there were underlying things for much more complicated applications we wanted to build, and we found out it didn't do so good. When I was actually part of the recent Lovable free weekend, I was in there messing with stuff because I wanted to try it out myself. I found out that Lovable has a real problem switching between light mode and dark mode when you're trying to go between them, and it would never remember, like once I turned it to dark mode, it was still leaving sections completely in the other theme, and I had to kept telling it, you got to change this to the right theme. When I'm on dark, I want it to all be dark. And I was thinking that was a real simple thing, but I didn't provide it a whole lot of context. I'm just sitting there telling it to do stuff. And that's where things have to change. And that's the technical debt that I'm talking about. Oh, we'll just leave it white in the dark theme. We'll fix it later, right? So as I look at this, I'm kind of seeing three pillars becoming part of this. And they are context architecture, so meaning the intentional design of how context is structured and stored. So think of that like designing a database schema. You need to define what information goes where, how it's dated, and how different types of context interact with it. For example, like customer support, if you built an AI chatbot or agent, and you might use tiered memory, recent conversation with short term, user history if they're a previous customer for medium term, and then company policies to fall back on for long term storage. And you've got pillar two, which is context dynamics, which means the context isn't static, it evolves over time. There's new versions of documentation for whatever you're developing in. So you want to be able to detect when there's drift in outdated information. You want to be able to prioritize that information so that it's relevant. You want to compress context so that it fits within the model limits that you're under or within. And then you want it to adapt dynamically when it needs to change. Without this, your AI agents can become confused, inefficient, and untrustworthy. And we've definitely seen that. And number three is context interaction. Your AI needs to interact with the real world. So it's calling APIs and databases, other agents. It's even working with humans sometimes. So this means designing APIs with context manipulation, event-driven updates, multi-agent context sharing, and human in the loop corrections. You need that as well. And this isn't just theory. We have recent industry reports that show that it's when you give an AI model the right context, that's going to determine the better outcome rather than the model that you actually pick. We also saw from the recent Apple report that the longer more complex a question is, and the longer the LLM has to think, the lazier it gets and the worse it gets at answering the problem or finding the solution. And so we have teams of people right now that are trying to come up with the perfect prompt for things like Google Ads, and they see everything from wonderful results to complete hallucinations. It's all over the board because they're just doing it willing. They're just trying to answer that question: can I get this Google ad made with a prompt, the right prompt? And so we need context to get it right every time. Here's the main challenges that I see that we're trying to solve here with context engineering. One, maintaining continuity across conversations. The next is managing information overload. The third is adapting to change requirements. Fourth is integrating external knowledge sources in. And then fifth, reducing technical debt by having explicit requirements that we give the AI assistant. Explicit requirements. Now, hang on just a second. After being in quality for over 25 to 30 years, have I ever heard that word requirements anywhere before? It seems that if you start with really good requirements, context, your software outcome will be better. Who would have ever thought that would have ever happened? Yes, I'm being totally facetious, but for real, that's the way it is. Now, this isn't just a trend. Major companies are now investing, and there's a quote here I want to read you from June 22nd of 2025, a blog post by Boris Tain. He's followed by widespread LinkedIn engagement from Armand Ruiz, VP of the AI platform for IBM, who said, in the AI gold rush, most people focus on the LLMs, but in reality, context is the product. So let's take a deeper look at how context engineering could transform software development. If you have started using Claude Code or the brand new Google CLI, you know that there is a planning mode for these. So instead of just launching into it and saying, I want to build the next Netflix or whatever, you start with PRPs. What are PRPs? They're product requirement prompts. So it's kind of like product requirement documentation, you have product requirement prompts. You're giving the AI assistant requirements. Great. I'm glad to see that. You next define the global rules that you want it to go by when it's creating the software and the format that you want as the output. You use templates for context assembly, and you do all of this to try to get consistent, maintainable code. That's the objective. For more complex applications, developers are going to need to build like a multi-tiered memory system and like context APIs so that it can go back and check when it needs to so that it can run as automatically as possible for longer periods of time. As someone who has spent a majority of their career in QA and performance, to hear that developers are going to be doing requirement prompts, what I would call requirements, that's a great thing, right? Because that ensures that the AI software is going to meet the standards day one. Building test cases in it means that you've got automatic validation of that code, and it is going to reduce the time overall to get to a good product. So if all you've been doing up to now is vibe coding, you'd like to check out context engineering, here's a plan for you. First of all, invest time up front. Gather requirements, define rules, assemble knowledge before you ever think about generating code. Next, treat context as infrastructure. Architect it like you would a database schema or an API contract. Next, automate your context assembly. Use templates and tools to standardize the creation of the code. Fourth, monitor and evolve. That means implement some kind of detection for drift and dynamic updates. And last but not least, collaborate across disciplines. Involve QA and performance in what you're doing. And these domain experts can actually help speed the process up, maybe using some of their AI-powered tools as well. If you're coding in Cursor, for example, you now have the Cursor rules, you have MCP servers you can connect into, you can point the documentation to Context 7, like I mentioned. There's all of these things you can do. If you're using Claude Code, there's several videos out there on YouTube, which I will list in the description here, of developers, like leading influencers, telling you how to set up these requirements, these rules, these MD files, so that like Claude and Gemini can look at those and point to those so that they start off on the right foot. Context engineering might sound like the new buzzword of the day, but I actually think we're going somewhere with this. It seems like it's an evolution of prompt engineering. And to me, it sounds like the old days coming back, which is actually a good thing because quality engineering principles never went away. Maybe they just got forgotten for a few minutes so we could just break some stuff and have fun. But as someone who has been advocating for good planning and proper process and actionable documentation for a lot of my career, context engineering sounds like a return to sanity to me. Maybe the next generation of AI systems will be built on context, not vibes. And frankly, it's about time. So what's your experience with context engineering? Have you already got everything figured out and you're already doing everything right? Or maybe you've never heard of it? Leave a comment below and let's talk about it. I'd love to hear about your experience either with it or without it. If you like the kind of content in this video, it'd be great if you like the video. Subscribe to the channel, ring the bell so you'll know about all the content that's coming out on this channel in the future, which I release content every week. You can also check out my website, scottmoore.consulting. I've written a blog article out there that you can check out where I go a little bit in more detail with that. And I also have a member section of the site. There's a basic membership, which is free, and then there's a paid tier, people who support my content. Hey, guys, I really thank you for that. That means a whole lot to me, and it keeps me pushing on. I want to go deeper and deeper into these technologies. We'll continue to keep up with context engineering, AI-powered software, as well as the traditional stuff we talk about, performance, software engineering, etc., etc. Remember, until next time, context is everything. See you on the next video. Bye-bye.